Natural selection. Variation gives some organisms an advantage over others. Natural selection increases the proportion of the advantageous alleles within a population. The process of natural selection. Randomly occurring mutations occasionally result in a different allele being formed. This can be damaging, which typically means the mutated allele quickly dies out. However, some mutations can create an allele that is improved compared to the original, helping the organisms to survive in certain surroundings. When the allele codes for a characteristic that rises the chance of an organism surviving, its frequency within a population can increase. This is known as natural selection. Not all individuals are as probable to reproduce as each other. There's differential reproductive success in a population. Individuals that hold an allele that rises their chances of survival are more likely to survive, reproduce and pass on their genes, plus the beneficial allele, than individuals with less advantageous alleles. This means that a greater proportion of the next generation inherits the beneficial allele. They are also more likely to survive, reproduce and pass on their genes. So the frequency of the beneficial allele in the population increases from generation to generation. Over generations, this leads to the evolution as the advantageous allele increases in frequency in the population. Evolution is the gradual change in species over time. It has led to the huge diversity of living organisms on Earth. Adaptation and selection are both key factors in evolution. And here's an overview of what happens. So, there's a random mutation, there is differential reproductive success, individuals with an allele more likely to increase survival are more likely to have reproductive success. The greater proportion of next generation inherits the beneficial allele. They are more likely to survive and pass on their genes, so the frequency of that allele increases over generations, leading to evolution as the advantageous allele becomes more common in the population. Individuals in a population of a species might show a wide variety of variation in phenotype. This is due to genetic and environmental factors. The main source of genetic variation is mutation. Meiosis and random fertilisation of gametes during sexual reproduction produce more genetic variation. Predation, disease and competition for means of survival cause differential survival and reproduction, i.e. natural selection. Those organisms with phenotypes providing selective advantages are probably going to reproduce more offspring and pass on their good alleles to the next generation. The differential reproductive success has an influence on the allele frequencies within a gene pool. As a worked example, the waste material from a zinc mine was left in a grassland habitat. This eventually created a new habitat and high concentrations of zinc in the soil. High levels of zinc are toxic to plants, so no plants were able to grow in this new habitat. After many years, scientists found a population of daisies growing in the toxic habitat. The daisies belong to a species, Arctotis acaulis, that normally only grew in the grassland surrounding the mining site. Explain how natural selection could produce a zinc-tolerant population of Arctotis acaulis in the mine waste. So, first of all, there are randomly occurring mutations which could result in a new allele being formed for zinc tolerance. Individuals with a zinc tolerance allele will be more likely to survive and reproduce and pass on the allele for zinc tolerance. A greater proportion of the next generation inherits the zinc tolerance allele. They are more likely to survive and pass on their genes, so the frequency of the zinc tolerance allele increases over generations. Zinc tolerance becomes more common in the population. Okay, now looking at types of adaptations. So natural selection gives rise to organisms becoming better suited to their environment. Adaptations are features that help organisms to survive in their surroundings. They can be behavioural, physiological, or anatomical. So now looking at behavioural adaptations. There are ways an organism acts that increase their chance of survival. So as an example, earthworms, when you touch one, it quickly contracts and withdraws into its burrows to prevent it from being eaten by their predators, as it has no eyes. Another example, scorpions dance before mating. This makes sure they attract a mate of the same species, increasing the likelihood of successful mating. Physiological adaptations. These are processes inside an organism's body that increase its chance of survival. So some examples. Brown bears hibernate. They lower their rate of metabolism over winter. This conserves energy so that they don't need to look for food in the months when it's scarce, increasing their chance of survival. Some bacteria produce antibiotics. These kill other species of bacteria in the area. This means there's less competition, so they're more likely to survive. Anatomical or structural adaptations. These are structural features of an organism's body that increase its chance of survival. So some examples are otters have a streamlined shape, making it easier to glide through the water. This makes it easier for them to catch prey and escape predators, increasing their chance of survival. Whales have a thick layer of blubber or fat. This helps to keep them warm in the cold sea. This increases their chance of survival in places where their food is found.